The Browns' biggest opponent isn't across the field, it's inside their own building. The ex-CEO's remarks cut to the heart of a franchise defined by dysfunction, where self-preservation trumps progress. Pride, jealousy, and denial have turned opportunity into chaos. Kevin Stefanski's alleged insecurity toward Shedeur Sanders is just the latest symptom of a deeper disease. Leadership afraid to admit it's lost control.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The team's draft missteps and lack of offensive investment only compound the problem, creating a perfect storm of instability. If this culture doesn't change, collapse is inevitable. The Browns can't rebuild on a foundation of ego and fear. Sanders' talent offers them a chance at redemption, a chance to reset their identity and rediscover purpose. But that requires humility, honesty, and the courage to confront the truth their former CEO has already exposed. Whether they take that chance or repeat history will define the Browns' future for years to come. The Cleveland Browns are in chaos, and this time, it's not just another disappointing season or a few bad coaching decisions. This is different. This is structural, strategic, and according to a former team CEO, it's intentional. What's happening behind the scenes isn't just dysfunction, it's sabotage. Sabotage of talent. Sabotage of opportunity. Sabotage of a team that's quietly tearing itself apart from the inside. At the center of it all, Shedeur Sanders. A young quarterback with the skills, confidence, and leadership to redefine this franchise's identity, and instead of building around him, the Browns are shutting him out. According to this former executive, it's not because Sanders isn't ready. It's not because he's lacking development. It's because the people in power are afraid of what he represents. Success, attention, change. And nobody appears more threatened by that than head coach Kevin Stefanski. The report lays it out plainly. Stefanski has gone out of his way to avoid discussing Sanders publicly. His name is missing from interviews. His access is limited. Media footage of him is practically non-existent. Not because there's anything wrong with the player, but because the spotlight he brings is a direct challenge to a coach whose job security is already on shaky ground. Stefanski is reportedly jealous. Not just uncomfortable. Jealous of the hype, of the fan interest, of the media buzz that surrounds Sanders before he's even taken a meaningful NFL snap. That kind of insecurity at the top? It doesn't just block opportunity, it poisons the culture. Instead of creating a competitive quarterback environment, the Browns have manufactured a shielded one. One where Dillon Gabriel, who was set up to fail behind a weak offensive line, is thrown in not because he's the best option, but because he's the safest one politically. A player who won't challenge the power structure. A name that won't outshine the coach. And the result? A disaster. Gabriel's been placed in a no-win scenario. The line can't hold. The scheme is basic. The team isn't putting him in a position to develop. But Shedeur? He's watching from the sidelines untouched. Shelved. Hidden. Not because he isn't the future, but because leadership isn't ready to deal with what happens if the future starts now. This isn't player development. It's image management. Amari Cooper game photos, and it's everywhere. The Browns' draft strategy this year raised red flags even before this expose. They ignored their biggest need, offensive line help, despite glaring holes. Instead of protecting their quarterbacks, they opted to stockpile future assets. Picks. Potential trade value. All while the current roster continues to suffer. Then came the trades. Amari Cooper. Joe Flacco. Both moved to division rivals. In the middle of a season. That's not just a rebuild, it's tanking. Deliberate moves to weaken the roster, increase draft position, and shift attention away from the internal conflict brewing just beneath the surface. Press conference. The message is clear. Leadership isn't interested in solving this season. They're trying to survive it. But that comes at a price. And the cost? Credibility. Trust. And maybe the one player who could have actually changed the trajectory of this entire franchise. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just a name. He's not just hype. He's a quarterback with elite processing ability, pedigree, and poise. A player who draws eyes, who brings attention, who matters. It's press conference, but in Cleveland? That's a problem. Because this franchise, according to the former CEO, is gripped by fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being exposed. Fear of what happens when people see what's really going on behind the closed doors at team headquarters. So they're hiding him. They're pulling media access. Restricting clips. controlling every narrative that might lead to questions they don't want to answer. Questions like, why isn't Shedeur playing? Why did they trade their top veterans? Why are they protecting a coach instead of building a team? Why are they sabotaging their own season to protect a fragile power structure? This isn't just poor leadership. It's sabotage of the fan base too. Because the people who've stuck with this team through years of losing, missed drafts, quarterback purgatory, they're being gaslit again. Told to be patient. Told there's a plan. But this isn't a plan. It's a stall tactic. And the locker room knows it. Players aren't blind. They see what's happening. They know who's being protected and who's being sacrificed. When leadership plays politics instead of ball, it kills trust. It crushes morale. And it splits teams from the inside. Recent match game photos. This kind of favoritism doesn't stay quiet. It leaks. It infects everything. Practices get tense. Players stop buying in. Accountability disappears. And when your locker room is led by fear instead of vision, the losses don't just mount, they compound. That's where the Browns are now. And the clock is ticking. The upcoming game against the Jets isn't just another Sunday. It's a tipping point. A moment that could define this regime's legacy. Because if the Browns lose again, and if the offense once again sputters behind a crumbling line, there will be no more justifications left to give. The pressure to play Shedeur will become overwhelming. And if they continue to resist? If they continue to play politics and hide behind development narratives? They won't just lose a game. They'll lose the last bit of support they have left, inside and out. Because what's happening now isn't sustainable. And if they don't course correct soon, they risk losing more than a season. They risk losing him. Players like Shedeur Sanders don't sit quietly forever. They don't accept years of suppression when they know they're ready. They don't stick around to be background noise while their career window closes. And if another team offers opportunity, trust, and leadership that actually embraces talent, what's stopping him from walking? At that point, the Browns will be left with empty excuses and another quarterback, what if, added to their long, tragic list. What's most frustrating is that this didn't have to happen. The Browns had a choice. They still do. They could have built around Shedeur. They could have embraced the spotlight, the challenge, the pressure. But instead they ran from it. They hid. They made decisions out of fear. They tried to delay the inevitable. But the thing about the inevitable? It doesn't wait forever. If Sanders eventually takes the field and plays well, the story shifts. Every lie, every delay, every politically motivated move becomes a receipt. A record of failure. And it won't just damage Stefanski's reputation. It'll stain the entire organization. The time to fix this is running out. Fast. Let us know your thoughts below. Should Shedeur be starting already? Is this tanking, fear, or straight-up incompetence? What needs to change before this team throws away another era? Tap like if you're tired of watching the Browns waste talent. Share this with someone who's been asking the same questions for weeks. And subscribe because as long as this story keeps unfolding, you know we'll be here to call it exactly what it is. Press conference. The Browns are staring down the barrel of a disaster they created with their own hands. This isn't bad luck. This isn't unfortunate injuries. This is an organization deliberately ignoring its clearest path forward because someone in the front office is more worried about protecting their ego than winning football games. And now the fans are watching the crash happen in slow motion. The Shedeur Sanders story is no longer just about a young quarterback being underutilized. It's about what he represents, a truth this organization refuses to face. Because if Shedeur goes in and succeeds, it confirms what many have already suspected, that the leadership has been actively working against progress. That this isn't about readiness. This is about control. And covering up months of bad decisions, poor draft strategy, and misplaced pride. You don't restrict media access to a player unless you're afraid of the spotlight. You don't avoid saying his name unless you know that name changes the narrative. And you definitely don't sacrifice games, trade away veterans, and stall out your offense just to delay putting him in, unless the truth is you're terrified of what that success would expose. Kevin Stefanski isn't just coaching scared. He's coaching like someone protecting a political position, not leading a football team. The former CEO didn't dance around it. The jealousy is real. The power games are real. And the longer Stefanski clings to this defensive, bunker-down mentality, the more obvious it becomes that Shedeur isn't being evaluated fairly. He's being silenced strategically. And what does that say to the rest of the locker room? Because when the players see that talent doesn't get rewarded, that politics trumps performance, that your shot depends more on whose toes you step on than how you play, that's when belief in the system dies. And when that dies, you don't just lose games. You lose the team. This is exactly how good franchises rot. One ego. One season. One wasted opportunity at a time. The most absurd part is that Shedeur Sanders isn't asking for a handout. He's not demanding starter status without earning it. He's simply asking for what every athlete wants, a fair shot. But even that seems too threatening for the current regime. Because they know once he gets a chance to perform, it's over for the current narrative. No more scapegoats. No more excuses. No more hiding behind development timelines or media distractions. The Browns spent all offseason talking about culture, about the future, about building something that lasts. But when the moment came to back that talk up with action, they folded. They chose to suppress their most marketable, most dynamic, and most promising player because leadership felt threatened. And let's be honest, this isn't just about Stefanski anymore. It's about everyone enabling this mess. The GM. The PR staff restricting media clips. The executives who stood by while key players were traded away mid-season, feeding into a tanking strategy disguised as asset management. Amari Cooper didn't need to be traded. Neither did Joe Flacco. You don't dump productive veterans to division rivals if you're serious about competing. You do that when you're hedging your bets, playing for next year, and hoping that the fans don't notice. But fans do notice. They noticed when the Browns ignored offensive line issues in the draft. They noticed when Dillon Gabriel, a rookie quarterback with raw tools, was thrown behind that line with zero protection and left to fail. And they definitely noticed when Sanders, who had the poise, skill set, and fan backing to bring energy back to the franchise, was shoved to the background. This team didn't just miss an opportunity. They ran from it. And every loss since has been a reminder that the people running this team are more invested in not being wrong than in being great. So now what? The Jets game is looming, and it's not just another Sunday on the schedule. It's a referendum. On the coaching staff. On the front office. On the culture that's formed around self-preservation and image control. If the Browns lose, especially if they lose ugly, the pressure becomes unbearable. Fans will demand answers. The media won't let up. And the locker room? They might finally crack. Because there's only so long you can pretend everything is fine when the talent's sitting on the bench and the team is spiraling. At some point, someone in that building is going to have to answer for why a player like Shedeur Sanders, NFL-ready, confident, talented, is being treated like a liability instead of the solution. And when that moment comes, there's no spin left. Every decision will be put under a microscope. Every week they stalled. Every trade they made. Every time Stefanski dodged a question. Every time Sanders was left out of the frame. They won't be able to say they didn't know. They won't be able to say it was just bad luck. Because the truth was clear and they ran from it. But it's not too late. It's close. But not too late. It's new match photos. The Browns still have a narrow window to fix this. To stop playing scared. To stop hiding behind development excuses. To admit they were wrong and do the right thing before it's out of their hands. Play Shedeur. Let him compete. Let him lead. Let him bring the energy and edge that this team so clearly lacks. Because if they don't, someone else will. Other teams are watching. Other coaches are paying attention. And if the Browns continue to waste him, you better believe someone will give him the shot Cleveland wouldn't. And when that happens, when Shedeur succeeds elsewhere, the narrative won't be kind. It'll be another name on the long list of Cleveland quarterbacks who were mismanaged, mishandled, lost not because they weren't good enough, but because the people running the show weren't. This isn't a quarterback controversy anymore. It's a full-blown identity crisis. And unless the Browns make a change, they're going to lose the one player who could have rewritten their story. And if you're still holding on to hope that this is all part of some grand strategy, some slow-cooked plan to develop Shedeur Sanders behind closed doors, let's be honest. That's not what's happening here. There's no sign of careful development. No sign of a clear timeline. No public statements suggesting he's next in line. In fact, every public move has done the opposite, shielding the current regime, softening media blowback, and pushing Shedeur further out of the spotlight he rightfully earned. Because here's the thing about quarterbacks like Shedeur. They don't come around often. He's not a raw project. He's a polished product. His NFL IQ is way ahead of where most rookies are. He processes like a pro, he's got command at the line of scrimmage, and he plays with a calmness you just can't coach. So when a player like that is being actively benched while a broken system plays out in real time, fans are right to ask, who exactly are they protecting? Because it's sure not the future of the team. The Browns could have taken this moment to reset the narrative. To say, yes, we've had issues, but here's our guy. Here's the next face of the franchise. A young, dynamic quarterback who can bring us out of the endless loop of rebuilds and disappointments. But instead, they've doubled down on silence. That silence is deafening. No progress updates. No clear backup to starter transition path. Just vague press conferences and a refusal to say the name everyone is talking about. It's not just bad optics. It's a leadership vacuum. Kevin Stefanski, the man in the eye of this storm, is now defined not by his vision, but by his avoidance. The longer he hides from the Shedeur question, the more it defines him. And not in a good way. When a coach can't acknowledge his most talented young player, it doesn't make him look strategic. It makes him look scared, insecure, out of touch. And let's not forget, this isn't a rookie coach. This is a man who's had years to establish a culture, build trust, and deliver results. But what we're seeing now is a coach who's shrinking under the weight of a player's potential. It's a sad irony. The very talent that could save Stefanski's job is the one he's working the hardest to suppress. And the longer this drags out, the more irreversible the damage becomes. Not just to the locker room. Not just to Shedeur. But to the entire fan base. Because fans remember this kind of mismanagement. They remember when talent was wasted. When opportunities were missed. When the front office chose politics over progress. They've lived through Johnny Manziel. Through Baker Mayfield. Through draft bust after bust. This is a fan base starved for a real shot at something special. And Shedeur Sanders is that shot. Yet here we are, watching the team gaslight its supporters into believing that waiting is somehow wise. That this is part of a bigger plan. A plan that just so happens to include trading away veteran leaders mid-season. Stockpiling draft picks for a future that may never come. Running Dylan Gabriel out week after week behind a busted offensive line and then pretending Shedeur's absence is normal. It's not normal. It's calculated. And it's starting to unravel. Because the more people talk, the harder it becomes to keep the truth buried. And now, with a former CEO spilling insider details and confirming the worst suspicions, there's no going back. You can't unring that bell. You can't pretend this is just about timing or readiness, when a former high-level executive is saying out loud what fans have whispered for weeks. That ego, jealousy, and fear are running the show in Cleveland. That Sanders is being hidden because his success would make others look bad. And here's what's coming if this doesn't change fast. First, the locker room will fracture. You can't ask professional athletes to give everything when they see leadership refusing to play the best talent. That creates resentment, division, and eventually full-on revolt. Second, the media will dig deeper. The spotlight is already heating up. And every bad game, every stalled drive, every loss without a quarterback change will only feed the narrative that this team is being mismanaged at the highest level. And finally, Shedeur himself will have a decision to make. Because there's a limit to patience. Even for the most mature, level-headed young stars. When you know you're ready, and the team that drafted you won't even give you a chance, it's only a matter of time before that relationship breaks down. Whether it's requesting a trade, playing with a chip on his shoulder, or mentally checking out, the Browns are risking everything on a gamble that he'll wait quietly forever. Spoiler, he won't. And neither will the fans. They're already done with the excuses. They've heard the word rebuild too many times. They've watched too many quarterback controversies, too many wasted seasons, too many promises that went nowhere. So the next time the Browns take the field, and the offense sputters again, don't expect patience. Expect noise. Expect calls for change. Expect questions about Shedeur to dominate every post-game interview, every sports headline, every discussion show. Because this isn't going away. Not until someone takes accountability. Not until someone admits that hiding a quarterback out of fear is not a strategy, it's an indictment. And not until Shedeur Sanders is given the opportunity he's earned. There's no sugarcoating it anymore. The Cleveland Browns are walking headfirst into a PR and performance disaster of their own design. And at the center of the storm is a name they refuse to say out loud. Shedeur Sanders. The Browns had a golden opportunity to reset their future, ignite the fan base, and build around a quarterback with not just talent but presence. Instead, they've locked him behind a wall of silence, while giving the wheel to a system that's already spinning out of control. Sanders, you can feel it building. The frustration isn't just from fans, it's everywhere. Within the media. Among former executives. Even behind closed doors in the locker room, where the whispers are starting to sound more like shouts. Why is Shedeur being sidelined? Why is a quarterback with elite football IQ, leadership qualities, and national buzz being treated like a threat rather than a solution? The answer, according to the former CEO who finally cracked the silence, is ugly ego. This isn't about development. It's about fear. The coaching staff, Kevin Stefanski especially, doesn't want to deal with the power shift that comes when a player like Shedeur takes over. Because if he wins, if he plays well, it changes everything. It challenges Stefanski's narrative. It puts pressure on the front office. It forces a reckoning with years of failed strategies and mismanagement. And it exposes the brutal truth that Cleveland has had the talent all along, they just didn't have the guts to use it. That's why you're not seeing clips. That's why the team is micromanaging media access. That's why Shedeur's name gets danced around like it's radioactive. Because they know the moment he steps into that huddle and starts slinging the ball with confidence and composure, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. It's control over competitiveness. And that's the most dangerous game an NFL franchise can play. You can't preach winning culture and then actively suppress your most promising player because he threatens your hierarchy. That's not culture. That's cowardice. And while they're playing scared, they're asking the fans to believe in a roster built on questionable decisions, like trading away Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco to division rivals mid-season. Moves that scream tanking. Because why else would you weaken your offense intentionally unless you were more focused on draft picks than wins? And look at what that's led to. Dillon Gabriel, a rookie thrown behind a failing O-line with little support, is being used like a placeholder. Not to win games, but to buy time. To keep Shedeur on the bench. To keep attention off the coach. It's not just frustrating. It's insulting. To fans. To players. And to the very idea of building a competitive team. Let's not forget, the Browns also ignored their crumbling offensive line in the draft. It wasn't an oversight, it was a strategy. They passed up protection for potential trades. Because that's where their focus is, not on the field but on the asset board. It's Madden franchise mode management in real life, and it's backfiring. And here's what's next if nothing changes. Shedeur's silence will turn into spotlight. Because if the team keeps losing and he keeps sitting, eventually the noise becomes deafening. Fans will demand to see him. Analysts will point out the absurdity of burying him. And every game he doesn't play becomes a headline of its own. You cannot keep a player like this in the shadows forever. So the Browns have two choices: lean into the storm or get swept away by it. Play him and you let the team evolve. Let the locker room breathe. Let the fans believe in something again. Keep him on the bench? You risk everything. The trust, the momentum, the future. Because eventually Shedeur Sanders will get his shot. The question is whether it'll be in Cleveland or somewhere else, making the Browns look foolish once again for letting another franchise quarterback walk. Let us know what you think. Should Shedeur start now? Is this situation salvageable, or has the team already lost the plot? Hit that like if you're tired of watching this play out like a rerun. Drop a comment if you've been calling this out for weeks. And subscribe because this story is far from over, and you know we're not missing a beat.